And moving on, ILTV had the opportunity to sit down with Education Minister Yoav Kisch, who was recently appointed to the negotiations team over the legal reforms at the president's residence. He talks about the legal reforms, the negotiations, and Israel's education system. Let's take a look. Education Minister Yoav Kisch, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Sure, my pleasure.
So I'd like to start with an issue that's been at the center of Israeli politics these past few months, and that's, of course, the legal reforms. You've been recently appointed as part of the team to head to the negotiations at the president's house. The coalition has made clear that it is ready to negotiate. Do you feel the same spirit from the opposition, and how are the negotiations progressing?
Well, when you say opposition, it's a bit more complex because you have different parties. I must say that I have seen sincere, let's say, I saw that part of the opposition comes to negotiation with open heart and really looking forward to see if we can come up with agreement. I can't say that I saw it across the board on the opposition. There are more extreme sides in the opposition, but I do hope that we will find at least some major partners between the parties in the opposition.
And how are the negotiations progressing?
Well, we're just in the, initiating the discussions, and it's just a very early stage. We spoke about the difficulties, each side, what are the worries, and I think in general, since I was involved also in the effort of negotiation before that, is that it is possible. I mean, it's not simple because there's a lot of politics involved, but I think that if we put the politics aside and do what's good for Israel and for the state of Israel and the people of Israel, we can come up with a constructive deal.
Now, at the end of the day, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has halted the reforms for now, postponed them, we should say. Did you have any reservations about the legal reforms as some other members of the Likud party came forward?
You have different opinions regarding how we should approach the reform. I think that there's a wide consensus among all the Likud members that we must have reform. The question is how and what would be the way to do it and so forth. So you do not have a disagreement between the Likud members about the need for reform in the legal system, but you do have different opinions of what happened in the last 2-3 months, what should we do differently. And I think that these are voices that we all should listen to, but eventually I think that the main message is that Israel must change its way of legal system because we have a lot of difficulties and the reform is totally needed.
And there's a consensus within the Likud about this. What about with regards to the rest of the opposition parties?
So as I said before, it's, I'm not an opposition member and I can't really judge, but what I hear from them is that we have different voices. I do hope that with some of the voices we can come up with an agreement.
And what do you think are the essential aspects, let's say, from the original reforms that were presented that should be carried over into any new reform that comes forward, with a broad consensus?
I think that you can come up with an agreement regarding, let's say, the general attorney position, and there's no legal definition for his position in the government. And we are now in a situation when, look, this has been an absurd. I can give you an example. I think it was a few weeks ago that the president of Israel, Yitzhak Herzog, called the general attorney and asked her, if she would allow the prime minister, yes, the leader of Israel, to say his opinion and to be involved in this huge crisis that is attacking Israel in the security, economics, international relationship, and the answer was no. So, it's kind of absurd that she is the one who is creating what's going on in Israel. She was not elected to that. It's not under her responsibility, and these are one of the things that we must change. So regarding that, I think we can come up with a mutual understanding with the opposition. There are other issues that are more, let's say, less, it will be harder to get an agreement on them.
But you think that eventually you'll be able to reach an agreement?
That depends on the sides, because if the sides will be willing to give up on some of the things that they see as very important, I won't say crucial, because on the crucial facts you cannot give up, but if you're willing to give up on important things in order to get to an agreement, you might be able to do so.
Now, I also do want to address the protests that we've been seeing these past few months. I mean, and more than the protests, we've seen something that I think we haven't seen before, and that is refusal to serve among, for example, Air Force pilots and others in the IDF. You, as a former Air Force pilot yourself, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, the pilots, some of them are friends of mine, and I know them for years, and they're very good people with, huge motivation to help Israel. I think they've been totally wrong. I think they did huge damage to Israel. This is something that we cannot accept. I don't think that nominating two conservative judges is a good reason to ruin the fact of and putting the Israeli army and the pilots into a political argument. I think that's a huge mistake, and that's a huge damage that I don't see how is going to be fixed that soon. And I think what happened on that is now that people kind of feel that they can turn their disappointment from the elections into acting against Israel's service in the army. So this is something that shouldn't be done. I think that it's a huge mistake that happened, and for that I'm sorry.
And are you at all concerned that this could continue into the future with any other decisions, let's say, that any government will take? And also, what do you think should happen? I mean, how do you think this issue needs to be addressed?
The way I see it is very simple. If someone is not willing to serve, even if he's volunteering, then the answer is no, thank you, you can leave us, we don't need you. We'll manage without you. No state and no army and no government can be dependent on people who are putting political issues in front of the service. So I think this is simple. I heard that from the Israeli Air Force commander just yesterday, that it's something that he had said. I think that's a very important message to everyone. If you don't want to serve, then if you're volunteering, then okay, no thank you, we'll manage without you.
And looking at the bigger picture, we see an education system, as you mentioned, that has many gaps. We see the protests, the refusal to serve, controversy over the legal reforms. Are you optimistic for the future of the State of Israel?
Well, I'm optimistic always. So for sure, when you talk on the future of Israel, but I'm looking in the near term. I feel the burden of the mission that we have to get to a broad acceptance of some kind of reform between all sides, coalition and opposition. I'm part of that process, and I feel the responsibility in that, and I think that also people in the opposition feel that way, and I hope that we'll be able to find the path that will reduce the tension and will create a broad acceptance of some kind of reform.
And we all hope the same and wish you the best of luck in this endeavor.
You. And happy Passover to everyone.
Thank you, and happy Passover.
Thank you.
And for the full interview, you can watch on our website, ILTV.tv, or on our app, ILTV News.